For decades, Ringo Starr has been seen as the peacekeeper of the Beatles, the calm one, the smiling face behind the drums, and the man who rarely said anything negative about anyone in the music world. He always seemed above the drama, letting John and Paul clash over songwriting credits while he kept the rhythm going. But as it turns out, even Ringo had his breaking points. At 84, he's finally opened up about the moments in his career that left a bitter taste, and the 5 bands he secretly couldn't stand. Not out of hate for the people, but out of what they represented. Behind his charm and humor was a man who saw the industry changing, not always for the better. And now, for the first time, he's ready to admit it. Number 5, the Monkees. In the late 1960s, the Monkees were everywhere. They were called America's answer to the Beatles, a phrase that made Ringo's blood boil. To him, the Monkees weren't a band, they were a TV project. 4 actors cast to mimic what the Beatles had worked years to become. While the world cheered them as the next big thing, Ringo saw something else entirely. A group pretending to play instruments, lip-syncing to songs they didn't even write. To a man who had spent years playing endless gigs in Hamburg clubs, fighting for credibility, the idea of an artificial band becoming famous felt like an insult. Ringo once joked publicly that the Monkees should be called the Prefab Four. But behind the humor was real frustration. He wasn't jealous of their fame. He was angry that the industry was starting to reward image over talent. He believed the Beatles had opened doors for musicians to express themselves honestly, not to create pop puppets. Over time, Ringo softened his opinion. He eventually met the members and admitted they were good guys, but that early resentment never truly left him. The Monkees symbolized what Ringo feared most, that rock music could become more about marketing than music. Number 4, Led Zeppelin. When Led Zeppelin exploded in the early 70s, their powerful sound dominated everything. Guitars louder, drums heavier, and performances wild. John and George admired their musicianship, but Ringo didn't. He respected them, yes, but he hated what their rise meant for music. To him, rock had lost its sense of swing and rhythm. He once complained that Zeppelin was so loud you couldn't hear the song anymore. For a drummer whose style was all about balance and groove, that kind of noise felt like chaos. Ringo believed that rock and roll had to move people, not deafen them. The real clash, however, came when Zeppelin's growing fame started overshadowing the Beatles' legacy. There was an unspoken rivalry between the two eras, the soft, melodic 60s versus the roaring, aggressive 70s. Ringo didn't care for their attitude either. During one infamous studio encounter in 1973, Zeppelin's crew reportedly blocked off parts of Abbey Road Studios to keep others, even Beatles engineers, from entering. Ringo took that as arrogance, a lack of respect for those who paved the way. He never called them out publicly, but in private, he admitted that Zeppelin's music had no soul. It was raw energy, but to him, it lacked emotion. Ringo liked music that smiled, not screamed. Number 3, the Sex Pistols. By the late 70s, punk rock had declared war on everything that came before it, and the Beatles weren't spared. The Sex Pistols famously called them boring old men, and that didn't sit well with Ringo. The irony? Ringo actually liked rebellion, but he hated empty rebellion. To him, the Pistols were loud without purpose, angry without artistry. He understood youthful frustration, but he couldn't respect the way punk spat on everything it didn't understand. What truly stung was how fans compared them to the Beatles, calling punk the new revolution of music. Ringo believed real revolutions were built on talent and endurance, not chaos and insults. He once said privately that the Sex Pistols made headlines, not history. In his mind, they were a flash of noise in an era that was forgetting its melody. They tried to destroy the past instead of learning from it, and that to him was unforgivable. Number 2, Oasis. Now, here's where things get personal. In the 1990s, Oasis revived Beatlemania for a new generation. The Gallagher brothers worshipped the Beatles, copying their haircuts, sound, and even their swagger. But for Ringo, it crossed the line between tribute and imitation. He once laughed and said, "They say they're the next Beatles. They're not even the next Monkees." Beneath the humor, though, was irritation. Oasis constantly mentioned the Beatles in interviews, using their name to boost their own legacy. Liam Gallagher even claimed he was bigger than Ringo. To a man who'd lived the real Beatlemania, those words felt disrespectful. What Ringo hated most wasn't their confidence, it was their attitude. He admired ambition, but he despised arrogance, and Oasis, in his eyes, were drowning in it. He believed they missed the point entirely, that the Beatles' magic wasn't about ego, but unity. Ringo once said, "We were brothers, they're just fighting each other." For him, Oasis represented everything wrong with modern rock: fame first, friendship later. Number 1, the Beatles, the later years. This might surprise fans, but the band Ringo struggled with most was his own. By the late 1960s, the Beatles weren't a brotherhood anymore. They were four men drifting apart. Ringo secretly hated what the band had become. Recording sessions turned cold. Every song became a battlefield, and Paul's perfectionism drove everyone mad. Ringo even quit the band for a short time during the White Album sessions, saying he wasn't playing well and didn't feel loved anymore. What he hated wasn't the Beatles' music. It was the pain behind it. He watched friendships fall apart in the studio that had once been filled with laughter. Every argument between John and Paul chipped away at the joy of making music. "We were supposed to be a band, not a business," he later said. Ringo came back, of course, but the scars never fully healed. When the band finally broke up in 1970, part of him was relieved. The hate he felt wasn't for his bandmates. It was for the toxicity that fame had created between them.
Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon.